There we go.
There we go. Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to...
Morning.
And morning. Yes, sorry about that. Welcome to Creating the Future's August 2014 board meeting. We are thrilled to all be here together. It feels like it's been a little while since we've had everybody in the room. And thrilled to have anybody who is here with us participating virtually via our Google Hangout page. Good afternoon or evening.
Okay, somebody has this up in their browser.
Yes, sorry about that. Welcome to Creating the Future's August 2014 board meeting. We are thrilled to all be here together. It feels like it's been... I don't think it's me.
Somebody has it up in their browser.
Thrilled to have anybody who is here with us participating virtually via our Google Hangout page. Good afternoon or evening.
Oh, Jesus, it's starting again.
Sorry about that. Welcome to Creating the Future. It's not me. 2014 board meeting. We are thrilled to all be here together. There we go. Well done.
It was us.
Whoops. Okay. Are we good?
I think so. There's only one of us happening at this. I feel like it's one of the doppelgangers.
We just doubled our board. Isn't that amazing?
You know how we always talk about we wish we could clone ourselves?
We just did. It's a new. It's one of those new skunk work projects from Google.
All right, let's go.
That's right. You said they had millions of employees. Now you know what they're doing. Hi, Mark. You're on mute, Mark Riffey.
He'll get there. There he is.
There he is. All right. So we want to welcome you to this board meeting, Creating the Future Envisions Communities, where people are living well individually and collectively, and we know such a future is possible simply because it's not impossible. To accomplish that, our 10-year mission is to change the questions embedded in the day-to-day work of individuals and organizations so that everyone naturally brings out the best in each other and in our world. A nice preamble for what it is we're planning to do for the next couple of hours. And again, we'll just say a welcome to all of those people who are watching at the Walking the Talk blog. And if you're going to be participating with us via Twitter, which we really encourage you to do, please use the hashtag CTFuture. CTFuture. And your questions, your comments, your ideas are very welcome during the course of our conversations. So we have a full complement today. The whole team is here, and we always start our board meetings by checking in with one another about what has been inspiring us lately, what has been awesome, and we'll throw the door open to whatever awesomeness has been going on. But gosh, it's great to have everybody here. Whoever wants to start, get us going.
I think Justin's in the awesomest place right now. I want to know what's going on with you.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, technically, I'm on vacation, which I guess is my awesome. I'm up in Lake Champlain, the New York side right now, after having gone through Boston. And I guess really that's just my awesome, is 2 weeks with my family, relaxing, having some fun. Probably when I'm done with this call, going out and going sailing. And just trying to enjoy that.
Mm. Mm. Well, maybe I'll follow up on that awesomeness because I'm just finishing holidays and had a absolutely staggeringly amazing 7 days of family and friends and kid and dancing and cottage, and it was just extraordinary, and so I'm still flying.
Yay.
I'll share a belated awesome since I was gone for our July meeting. So I had hinted at this, which is the Swedish Political and NGO Festival, which is on the island of Gotland. So that was in early July, right before our meeting. And it went really, really well. It was such a cool experience to bring all these people together. It's a tiny little island, and thousands of people, thousands of events, including the event we put on, which was about how we can take a Swedish society and create one that celebrates failure instead of fears it. It's something that I've found in my time in Sweden that really holds back a lot of things, from all kinds of progress, entrepreneurship, basically all types of things that you just need to embrace failure instead of fear it, and celebrating it makes possible. So I hope to convene this big panel. Unfortunately, my Swedish isn't so good, and the whole panel was in Swedish, so there are plenty of awkward moments where I was in the first row and someone would say something funny, and I just have to do my best, and just laugh until people stopped laughing and hope that it was actually funny. But it was a really great experience and a really beautiful place as well.
Oh, God, that reminds me of this story.
Garth's story.
Garth's story.
One of our fellows, Garth Nellen Foreman, who is in New Zealand, tells the story that he does a lot of work in the Pacific Islands in Papua New Guinea, and he was in a setting once where I believe they were all speaking French, but I'm not entirely sure what the language. It doesn't matter. It was not a language that he knew, and they had translation. But what they found is that jokes don't necessarily translate. And so what they would do when Garth was speaking is the translator would say, "And now the speaker is telling you a joke. I will tell you when to laugh."
and he thought first of all,
he figured he was killing it.
He thought he was killing it. He is a very funny guy, and
he's the best storyteller.
He tells wonderful stories, and they're just belly laugh stories that he tells. And he thought he did great. And I guess it was the next night or something, he went out to dinner with the translator, and he said, "Wow, that really went well." And after a drink or two, the translator said, "Well, actually, here's what was really happening." Which, of course, is another great Garth story in and of itself.
Love it. Who else?
Well, I've been on holiday for the last week, which, as everyone else has said, has been nice. I've just been pottering around at home, which has been really good. But the awesome for me was that it was my oldest son's 12th birthday, which just seems to have sort of flown past as these things always do.
Oh my gosh.
The next one is 9 years old in about a week's time, so we're quite close together.
Wow.
What did you do to celebrate his birthday, Carl?
Oh, we went bowling with him and his friends, which that's one of the other interesting things, how birthday parties change as they get older. Smaller seems to be the thing. Friends staying over, so it's really nice.
They actually get smaller, and then they get a lot bigger and a lot more interesting.
And more expensive.
So, Gail, I wanted to give you a kudo from Rebecca, who is tweeting in today. And Rebecca said, "Love how beautifully Gail sets the stage for the universe.
Aww.
Here for the first amazing chunk of the meeting."
Aww. Thank you.
Yay, glad you're here, Rebecca.
So I figured that's an awesome for you coming from Rebecca.
Yes, indeed. And hopefully she'll tell us what her awesome is as well.
I know. I hope good. And I will really miss Rebecca's live in person awesome, because hers are always so awesome. But I have two awesomes. Work related is that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier for the folks that were on. We're finally back in the mode of doing what we used to call our newsletter and are now calling our journal, because we realized that it is so in depth. It's not a newsletter, which seems cute and family photos-y. And this journal, this edition of the journal, was entirely populated by our fellows, which is going to be the norm from this point forward. We're going to, it's one more piece of that transition away from this being founder-driven. And so I'm looking very much forward to my contributions being the exception, not the rule. And it was just wonderful to have. And we're watching retweets of, and actually not even retweets. We're not even initiating the tweets. People are initiating their own tweets about some of the posts that our fellows did. So that's exciting from a work perspective. It also from a work perspective was pretty overwhelming to create and I need to post this online for the folks who are watching online, the chart of our programs. because sometimes I get exhausted when I look at the programs that this band of volunteers is creating, and so posting. I will post that online, but just sharing it with the board and creating that that chart of all of our programs was an awesome from a work perspective. And then from a personal perspective, I continue to be learning on this sabbatical, and none of it is anything I thought I was going to learn. I thought I was going to learn work stuff. I thought I was going to read interesting books, which I am doing, and learn all about the world and further my work. And it's all happening in here, and has been pretty wonderful. So yeah, I'm looking forward to how that translates into what's next for all of us. But it's been pretty exciting to and delightfully surprising at every turn.
What's the most interesting thing that you've read, Hildy?
I am reading so many different things, Carl. I am reading, and I think you would really like this one. It is Steven Pinker's latest book. It is this thick. It is called The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. And he goes through these historic... Have you read it, Carl?
I haven't, no, but I know what you mean.
Oh, my God. He goes through... probably the first 400 pages easily, maybe 500 out of 700, are historical themes of watching, and the data and the research in it is just impeccable, but watching violence decline, and so what caused it from physical conditions, what caused it from things like the printing press, and our navigating, so suddenly we were going around the world and meeting other people. The increase in weaponry, which increased the number of deaths in a war, but decreased the number of wars. I mean, so it's just fascinating from a data perspective and a history perspective. That one's been pretty interesting, and then the rest have been all. Yeah, I will post a list. I've actually started posting a list at my blog. That's the other awesome, and then I'll shut up. Is that I have been blogging this sabbatical, and I've never done that before. So at my personal blog at hildegottlieb.com, I've actually been blogging my sabbatical and what I'm learning and what I'm exploring. And the one that I will be posting tonight is what it looks like when you completely fall off the sabbatical wagon. Because everybody has this idyllic view of, oh, isn't it nice, she's writing and it's flowing and she's thinking and she's having all of these, and the truth is last week I spent planning for the board meeting and getting a podcast done, and so yeah, that's been an adventure in and of itself, is just blogging this, which makes me be even more aware of it. So it's been good.
I'm trying to think of what the self-help group is. It like Sabbaticalitions Anonymous or
Sabbataholic? I don't know.
I had a couple.
Does that make you a saboteur?
Yeah, well.
Couple of awesome.
Needed you for that.
and this is in the book department. I'm reading an interesting book now called Quitting. And it has to do with the psychology of persisting on paths and courses that are detrimental to you, or organization, nations, countries. So it's quite fascinating to see the built-in psychology that exists in us that makes that happen. And is everyone? Yeah, everyone's still alive. So I'll post the exact title and all that, but I think you would find it really, really interesting, because if you're looking at changing a course of action, what are all of the things you don't realize that are built into both our culture, our society, and your biology that make it more comfortable to continue something that is not optimal? And it's sort of like, some of the things are well, we've already invested so much in that, so we're going to continue to invest in it even though there is no hope. It's sort of like the Vietnam War thing. Well, we've already had all these soldiers who were killed. Well, we can't let their lives go to waste. We're going to continue to kill more people. That will somehow fix it, which it usually doesn't. The other thing relates to the Hildy talked about the newsletter. going out. This particular newsletter is the first one that went out in a format that, and worked together with Candace, that Candace will be able to do directly without it being all HTML-y, and be able to put it out. So that's pretty awesome. And the other awesome, which is sort of personal community kind of awesome, is Tucson inaugurated its first streetcar in like 60 years. Mm-hmm. So we have a streetcar system that runs about 5 miles in town. And that actually, it's the first American-made streetcar in 60 years. So all the others that have been made in other U.S. cities are made in Germany or in Asia or in a variety of different countries. But this is the first one that was made, that they literally had to tool up a plant to figure out how to do this, to make it. So it's very, very cool. We got to be there for the ribbon ripping, which is the streetcar drives through the ribbon, and we got to ride it, which was very, very cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
My awesomes were yesterday morning, and I met these two at the farmers market here in town. I'm still getting used to Tucson and the new places and things, and I hadn't been to the farmers market, so that was really fun yesterday morning. And then everyone keeps talking about their holidays or vacations, and I was really excited because this weekend I booked a plane ticket home. I have 2 friends getting married consecutive weekends back in Minnesota, and I'll actually be home over my birthday as well. So it was pretty exciting to tell my parents and my sister that see you soon. So
they'll be happy.
Yeah.
How about Rebecca? How about Mark Riffey? Mark Riffey, I see you there, but I don't hear you. You think he's there?
I don't know. I do love that photo of him, though.
We just need to give him a little poke. Come back, come back. And okay. Cool.
Mark said he's
working on it. He just posted working on it.
And can we check and see where Sydney is, or what happened? What's happening for him?
Dropped.
Yeah.
He's coming in and out. So.
Okay.
Hey, I can share not awesome. I just for the first time got stung by a wasp during a Creating the Future board meeting.
No.
So I went dark.
Grief. Oh.
Wow.
Just a little one.
Clearly, you're not allergic.
Not yet.
No, I was just.
Too soon to tell, Gail. Too soon to tell.
My
If
God.
I start filling the whole screen.
Oh my God.
That's a movie. That's from a movie.
Oh, no kidding.
Right.
Mark just noted that he's going to leave and come back in, and I think Sydney's doing the same. So we'll
Okay.
we'll see what happens.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
How about now?
Yes.
There's
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
It's magic.
Woo.
So that was
How
my
are
little
you?
piece of micro awesome.
Macro awesome.
My
Yeah.
macro awesome is that I am coming to you once again from the state of Montana.
Wow.
Brilliant.
What you doing there?
We moved back, well, not back, we moved back to Montana, but we moved to Missoula to be close to the grandkids.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So we're in the same town with them, and now we don't have to stare at a FaceTime screen and go, "Arr."
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
that's the best news.
Yeah, we're pretty jolly about it.
Ah.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
So that's what your picture was of the was it the Montana State sign and the trademark Mark Riffey
Top of
forehead.
his head.
Yeah, you know, I did that just for you guys, actually. But yeah, that's what that was about. That and that sign is it's about 11 hours from here.
Wow.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is wonderful news.
So I'll be hanging out with young people that are slightly more mature than me.
Perfect.
Now, how young are they?
6 and 4, or 6 and almost 4.
They're perfect teachers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, my youngest was just in Billings, left on Sunday, so he was sort of in the neighborhood.
Well, it's too bad he wasn't here to help us
As in
unload.
north of here?
Well, sort of in the neighborhood.
You're from Canada? Do you know?
Do I know Gail? Yes,
Oh my gosh. You know that happened to me recently, right? I was in New York State. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Scary. Okay. How about Rebecca? Did she share an awesome?
No. Other than you're awesome, but
That you are awesome. So.
we already went over that one.
We did. Okay. Well, maybe if she thinks of one, she's welcome and encouraged to pipe in. And there's no one else at this moment that we're aware is watching or tweeting with us?
Not that isn't already
Not that
in the
hasn't
meeting.
tweeted, yeah.
All right. All right. They're all in holidays.
Yep.
Okay. So today we have 3 priority topics that we'll be working our way through. I think perhaps, Candace, the 2 of us, if we work together on the timing to make sure that we actually get those things done, that would be great. So, but that's not until we start. We have 1 item in our consent agenda, and although we haven't received minutes, so perhaps we don't have an item in the consent agenda. So, moving right along, the 3 topics that we're going to be focusing on are reviewing our IRS 990, considering a framework for compensation for instructors, and then a review of how our open meetings are going and any ideas and wishes that board members have for how to address concerns or new ideas or possibilities. So, as always, we are going to use the framework of thought that I have started to refer to as an inquiry framework, but is still our thought framework, and use the reverse engineering model to its best. There he is.
Wow.
I hope so.
Now Sydney's outside.
He's outside, but I think he's frozen.
Can you hear us, Sydney?
I can hear you.
Yay, we can hear you. Yay.
Excellent. Do you want to offer an awesome?
It's awesome that I'm online now. That's the best awesome of the week.
Absolutely. And you're outdoors.
It looks like you've got awesome weather too.
All summer. The whole summer's been great.
Oh, nice. You guys
Just
deserve it.
Just in time for the crazy winter, which I'm sure we're going to pay for.
It works.
Are you sitting at home or at your office?
At home.
Oh, with beautiful flowers.
Which is my office at the moment. Yes.
Fabulous.
Absolutely.
And you also win for coolest headphones. You're really putting our
I don't know. I think I just had to reset my computer. I had too many things going on there, so looks like it's working now.
Yep. Yay. Fabulous. Okay. If you think of any other awesomes that you want to share, just shout them out. But we're just getting ready to begin consideration of the first item on our agenda, which is the review of our 990. And you'll remember a year ago, believe it or not, not quite a year ago, we did actually have a conversation about what this 990 makes possible and what we wanted to use it for. And our primary reflections were that it be a way of holding ourselves accountable as well as celebrating our accomplishments. So I'm opening up the floor to conversation and thoughts about this year's 990.
I just want to share what was posted in the blog post, some specifics that came out of last year's conversation of what the board wanted to consider. So when it comes to this at-a-glance story of the organization's performance, here's what the board said they wanted to see. Mission successes, resources that were engaged to create that success beyond just money, demonstrating consistent values, beliefs, and language, celebrating what we accomplished and what we learned, and overall cohesiveness, consistency, and thoroughness. So not just what is normally in the 990, which is the money, but looking at all of the resources that we engaged, how we engaged them, and what we accomplished with that.
Beautiful. So as you review this year's, as you look through the document, in what ways do you see that document meshing with what it is that we would like it to be? And are there spots is there room for it to be more? Or for us to include more? Although I understand it's pretty tight.
There's always malleability. Yeah, well, I'm curious as to people's impressions when they first looked at it. What are your impressions?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I had a thought about, as I picked it up and I read it, I read it. It looked just as I expected it to. But then I had a thought. I said, well, as a public document, what would this mean to others that aren't aware? And it took me down, as things always do, took me down the road of, what are the audiences that for whatever reason would find the occasion to read our 990, and under those circumstances, how would they view it? And I think if you're someone that unaware of the evolution of creating the future, and you just take it at face value, you would say startup organization, you would say I would say struggling organization, you might a variety of different things that you would say without the context and the background. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's what I left with after having this conversation with myself is that it might be a helpful exercise at some point to think about, well, what are the additional? There's nothing else that can go in the 990, but are there documents or statements or something that would accompany it for those that would be viewing it for the first time or viewing it unaware of the evolution of creating the future?
Were you able to link through to the web page that it has on it?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure
and that's helpful, and that is helpful. I'm just saying that it takes a while before you get to that, right?
So put that at the top. If nothing else, we could put that at the top.
That's my point. Like if I'm thinking as a grant reviewer, for example, the quick scan, like it's a 990. You expect it to be a 990, and that's what it is. So so that was my general thought.
Great. I'm going to go pull that up and print it because I'm tired. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So I think similar to Sydney, I had some kind of reflections as I was looking at it, particularly in terms of the financial conversations we were having 2 or 3 meetings ago. And I think that, I look at all of these in entirety, that, we're looking at our P&L, our profit and loss statements, and our balance sheets, and I think in what I read about what was the goal last year, there was a lot of the uncoupling, not making these just accounting documents anymore, but really, I think just as Sydney was saying, infusing more of the message. And one of the things that I think could be really powerful is, when we're looking at the Schedule O, particularly the 990, that's a wide open space. We can do whatever we want with that. I would actually like to see us kind of blow open that model of financial reporting, that it's not accounting, that the expenses get much more closely tied. I really appreciated the accomplishments piece, but I feel like we still didn't capture what the organizational effort was.
Right.
You know, what are the volunteer infusion? What are the thought infusion that's going in? It's somehow capturing that essence. And I don't know how we do that succinctly, but I felt that the accomplishes, while impressive, didn't really. There was still not as strong a link between the financials that were reported and the programmatic things. And I think we could go a long ways in really turning that, in my opinion, inside out. And again, I think that also applies not just to the 990, but to our budget, to our profit and loss statements, to our balance sheets. There are ways to really push the limits on those in a way that I think all organizations should. But I think we could really, we're the test site for a lot of this.
Yeah. Justin, would you do us the favor of helping with language with that? And unfortunately, I know you're on vacation, and we don't have lots and lots of time for filing. One of the issues, and I'm sorry, I'm behind the machine right now because I'm printing this out. One of the things that happened last year was that they changed the IRS form that significantly limited what we could put in there. The text that we could add and the formatting that we could add it in. But if you have any ideas about how to articulate what you're talking about, that would be fabulous.
How I would do that, sorry, just to rewind a minute, and now I've been on the board for some time. I'll probably end up just repeating what I said last year. But it's quite interesting to look at the Form 990 compared to charity accounts in Britain. And I think there's a number of people that would argue in Britain that charity accounting in Britain leads the world. And if this was charity accounts in Britain, the first section, or the Trustees' Annual Report, or the TAR as it's known here, it's very explicitly a commentary on the finances that come later. I mean, it has sections about organisational performance and so on, but there are very specific paragraphs that are guidance on the finances that come later on, so that anyone with a sort of a reasonable level of understanding of how charity finances work should be able to read the annual reports and marry the narrative. Now, I suppose what I was going to say is that if you're quite limited in terms of what you can do in terms of what the 990 itself puts in, can you put web links in there where you can take people to a different place where you don't have those constraints on what we say, and try and explain your accounts in a way that you think, or we think, sorry, that are useful. So, I mean, if you look at my organisation where I work, our charity accounts, where you will compare this year with last year is a pretty common thing. Look at what are the major components of your income, the major components of your expenditure, because I got to a few places with this 990, and okay, I'm not accustomed to reading these, but a couple of places it leaves me asking questions.
Give us the questions.
So, the point about the anonymous donor in here, which is a relatively large proportion of our turnover. So clearly we can't answer who that is, but what would have happened if we didn't have an anonymous donor type thing? When you look at the expenditure early on in the 990, and it talks about, to someone who, like me, is not used to reading these things, it essentially looks like we spend all our money on administration costs. And I don't believe that to be the case, but it would be possibly useful to have sort of commentary in terms that matches up with the different bits. But hey, yeah, just.
I would agree with Carl, coming at it from a bit of an outsider's perspective, in that I've never seen your 990 before, and so I took it as my challenge to say, okay, can I kind of figure out what's going on? And moving, I'll start with the micro and then move to the macro a bit. But the first thing that struck me is, wow, you guys aren't getting paid very much. From my own perspective of working for an organization where I didn't get paid nearly enough, I started thinking, well, are they okay with this? Is this a problem? Are they getting revenue from other sources? Is the organization sustainable in that they can at least thrive and survive in other ways or not? So I was missing a big commentary on a piece like that. The reason I mentioned that is just that sort of got me hung up, and therefore is a big missing puzzle piece, I think. So that I think really welcomes some commentary. So I'm not sure if it's something you might be able to do is like the analogy I was thinking of was like a compass rose. So you kind of have this like forced map. You kind of have to work within latitude, longitude, whatever. But then you can provide some kind of a legend. You can guide us through it a little bit. So I guess what I would have liked is a bit of I don't know, kind of a gradient. Are we happy with this? Are we not happy with this? I actually don't know from reading it.
Right now, Alex, because I'm loving that you're coming up with this stuff, is if you tell us what you want annotated, we can together figure out the annotation. This isn't filed yet. I mean, that's the reason we're discussing it. And so adding these things to the website link is exactly what we want to do. So I'm like voraciously eating up everything that you guys are talking about.
Good. So I guess my two biggest questions would be around compensation. So in other words, like, are you yearning for more? Is it okay? Are you able to? I mean, is that an okay thing? Is it something we need to really focus on for next year to make sure that you're compensated fairly for all the really hard work you're doing? And then also is curious around the amount going into to office space.
Guilty.
Yes.
I love the idea of an annotated Form 990, literally annotated. I came across a guy once that basically used to take people's speeches or policy documents and he put them into his own document, and it was called How to Read ... So how to read the Creating the Future Form 990, where you might literally have it with sort of almost sort of digital post-it notes stuck around it on the different bits where we might ask questions, which I think you can do in PDFs these days.
Yeah, keep going. The thing that I'm smiling at is that if we were making the kinds of salaries that we should be making, you guys wouldn't have mentioned the rent.
Well, I think that goes to Carl's point about it looking administrative heavy.
Exactly.
Because and that's where I think so I think to Carl's point, yeah, welcome to the U.S. and how we think of charity all in terms of taxes and finances and not actually community effort and community assets and how they're engaged. And I think that's the big thing. I mean, that's fundamental to our philosophy, is thinking about abundance and thinking about assets. And the 990 just doesn't show that. And I think we can show that much more clearly. And we've talked previously about some of those things we can put financial information on. I mean, yes, we don't know what, we don't have salary numbers attached to people, but we should have a good sense of how much time everyone's putting in. I mean, you know, we have to log board members, but the board members are putting in other time, and fellows are putting in time, and I think, you know, in a way that's reasonable, we need to be able to capture and show that those assets are engaged. And I think, to Alex's point, we have to put some values around those to say, this is why it's been important for us to arrange our assets in this way, of which salary is one of them, and nodding to sort of what that means short-term, what that means long-term, that for us as an organization. And so that I think is the narrative that's even richer than the program accomplishments, but it's really, I mean, I love what Carl talked about, what they have in the UK, although I don't know if I want to be tarred and feathered, but to the that report component of it, you know, one of the things that it's kind of funny, next week I actually go and do a financial training, and one of the things we talk about is creating just a paragraph that's a profile statement of the organization, which has a really simple format, which is, you know, so for us, what are we, $60,000? You know, we're a $60,000 organization, annual budget, with the revenue coming from, you know, primarily A, B, and C. We use that, those resources, you know, we use that to conduct these primary program areas sort of in this proportion, And the thing that's most valuable to us as an organization, the biggest investment, the biggest thing we think about for sustainability is A, B, and C. So it's a 3 or 4 sentence paragraph that just locks all of that stuff together, so that when someone looks at it, it's going to open up a lot more questions, but it sort of summarizes and just really quickly connects people. Oh, this is the kind of finances you have, this is kind of how they're allocated in terms of what you do, and this is what's most important for you as an organization in terms of what you think your investment or asset mix. You know, for some people it's saying our volunteers are totally critical. Without them, we're out of business. Others, it's we rely on professional expertise, so we make sure that we invest in that. So that's the values piece that gets embedded. I'll stop now.
Good, it's good.
Now, a question, because when you look at the 990 itself, which is what ends up at GuideStar and et al., we have, and I'm trying to think about maybe changing the phrasing of it, in page 2, number 28, under part 3, is really, you know, we added that in to go to the website. It's also talking about it at the end, and then the website has, you know, the accomplishments, and I think all of what you're saying is fabulous. I'm wondering about the language there. If you were looking at this, do you say, now you're reading all this, and you know, to get the real scoop, go here.
I think that that's most reasonable, because I think there's not a living soul that doesn't hate the 990 and wish that it gave better information. And so I think for the real story, yeah. Because I'm seeing all of this being at the website, the web page that you created that has the videos at it, that can have all of this additional information in it.
Mm-hmm. And actually, who we are and why we are can almost be a standalone piece about the organization.
Well, the thing that I'm, well, and it can be the introduction to the Schedule O. That paragraph that Justin was talking about can be the introduction in the Schedule O. The thing that I'm loving about this conversation, and I just need to share with you guys, is that the real big emphasis last year in the conversation, and again, we were having this conversation in like July, August. I'm trying to remember, maybe September of 2013. So all of what you saw in the accomplishments of 2013, only a part of that had been accomplished so far. And what the board was very eager to talk about at that point, without a lot of review of 2013, looking back at 2012, was, okay, what did we accomplish? And I'm loving the fact that given all we have been accomplishing now, that, yeah, okay, we've got the accomplishments down. Now let's talk about what's important to us and our values and our assets. And so I'm loving the growth in this conversation. I just need to sort of express that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I, you know me, so there are only certain parts of the 990 that are sacred pieces that, you know, for the IRS purposes, we have to make sure we get in there, which are basically the numeric pieces,
right.
And that's fine. But I think about, I actually have to pop over to see which one it is, but part 3, where we say it's item number 28, where we say see Schedule O. I mean, I would almost prefer where that's talking about what your purpose is, and I would just love to see, you know, change the question, change the world. See Schedule O, you know, and you know, and I actually sort of I pose this to, you know, Sydney and Alex and Carl and Mark. I'm not sure how you responded, but you know, if you were reading along and you saw that, you know, Sydney, I'm sure you look at a lot of 990s. You know, what would that do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that it would draw you in, and I think my only point about the place where this sends you, if you will, is that it needs to send you somewhere with a succinct why message. It's not a brochure. It's not a history of. It's not even a long list. I mean, in part it's accomplishments, but it's just you need to have. And this is all a part of kind of reinventing things, right? From the standpoint of our work, I think, the majority of organizations complete the 990, and it is what it is at face value, and there's not even this conversation around how do you figure out a way within a structured IRS document to still lead people to the why, right? That's what I think is fascinating about all this stuff. We're saying we're going to let it be what it needs to be for the IRS, but how do we at the same time lead people to the why from this dry document, right? And when does that need to happen? And for me, it needs to happen early on. But to answer your question, it would absolutely draw me in, and it would draw me in even more if there's a way to make it sooner.
To me, Sydney, this goes back directly to the conversation we had, which was around. Oh, sorry, there's a lag. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's right. You got.
That we were having about, okay, so what's our financial responsibility? And we realized, okay, so we've got to do the couple of things that are our fiduciary responsibility. We have to make sure we kind of check those boxes. But then this whole thing. So let's do the same thing with the 990. Okay, so make sure that we have the boxes checked. Make sure you don't get in trouble with your 990, and then boom, let's build beyond that and create a better model.
I mean, this is literally a joke, right? So I'm gonna preface this with this, but it's almost like if you used a dummy URL that says why we're more than this 990, as opposed to www.creatingthefuture.org. I'm just there's got to be. It's about creatively thinking about how do you lead.
Right.
Hey, why doesn't it have a landing page?
Exactly. It's a different. It will go to a different landing page.
Sydney, I don't think that's a joke at all.
I don't think it's a joke at all.
I was sat there before thinking, could we come up with something sarcastic like / actually interesting stuff, or.
But I mean, there's nothing keeping you from defining, a URL and having it go to whatever Y landing page. Right. You have an actual URL be a message in and of itself. You could do that. I'm assuming. I don't think there are any stipulations as to what you put in that slot. And then you're talking about being, 3 or 4 inches down on the page, having something that jumps out at you and leads you to where we'd like you to go.
Now, are you talking about in the name of the organization?
Absolutely.
I think
that's
Sydney
why I said it was a joke.
I think actually Sydney just landed on a potential revenue model, which is we actually get that URL and then you put,
/ whatever organization.
WTF 990 meme / creating the future. And we usurp GuideStar and we take what Mark was, what Carl was saying of annotating. Allowing organizations to annotate their 990 PDF right there. And I know that I saw that, Rebecca Hurd tweeted about, really, part of this too is GuideStar is trying to do a lot of this, and they let you beef it up. But you have to go into GuideStar. You have to follow that link. You have to drill down into what they have. And I think Rebecca's absolutely right. We need to take advantage of GuideStar as best we can. But what you're saying, Sydney, and Mark, what you said of having its own landing page,
right?
And again, modeling it,
right? And it's the thing is, attention spans are short. Attention spans are short. If you come to look at a 990, you're going to look at the 990. But why not pique your interest to something else in addition to that early on?
I love it being the third item down when they ask for the website. That's the website we give them.
And that page could have 2 buttons on it. If you're the IRS, click here. To the home page. If you really want to know what we're about, click here.
I did not say that.
Page,
The other button.
page not found. Page not
To
found.
find Sydney,
You.
to find Sydney's Cayman Islands account, click here.
Noting that
Seriously, to add to that, there's a movement called /open that you might have come across.
It is open, right?
And the idea is that if your organization has any open data, that you should always have a page on your website that's /open where you put your data. So again, if you want to model what the future should look like in our opinion, the data that's in the IRS form would be also on a page on the website called /open if people wanted to manipulate it themselves.
Yeah.
So we could set going a similar movement that's, as Justin has said, is that /real990 or /useful990 that, as you say, sort of annotates 990 forms with actually useful stuff.
So let me ask Hildy and Dimitri, I presume, and Candace, has this conversation given you at least the beginning of what you might need in order to take the next step with this document? Do you want to convene a conversation further to this with participation from board members, as was being suggested?
Here's what I would like to do. I would like to completely, I would like to have some time to completely do everything that you guys are talking about, because I've never been excited about a 990 before, and I'm actually excited to do this. Did I mention falling off the sabbatical wagon? But, a couple of things. I believe, and you will have to check with Carolyn, we discussed the 990 in October of last year.
That's right.
I'm wondering if our filing date, I keep thinking our filing date is September, I'm wondering if our filing date is November, then we can have the time to do this mindfully.
Yeah.
And,
because right now that the filing date, the current filing date is the 15th. So we're like a few days.
We just need to get an extension.
Yeah, we're a few days, but I'm pretty sure we can get it extended to November. In which case we can have a mindful conversation, because this is really fascinatingly cool to be able to look at this as something that not only becomes the revenue model that
I think that's fabulous.
that becomes revenue model, but also serves as a model for other organizations. I mean, really, wow, you know, that this is a document that you have to file that intentionally avoids the outcomes. You know, this is all about the means, you know, not about the ends, and is very, very clear that, you know, it makes it difficult to talk about the outcomes.
Here's what I'd like to do in the interest of time. I would like us to take another stab at this, given all of the input that you guys have given us, and to not take tons and tons of time, but to have you guys review it before our September meeting, and during our September meeting, see if there's any additional comments and go from there. Assuming, and we will check with Carolyn Seckler, assuming that our filing date is actually November and we can get an extension. But if that works for you guys, I would love to take another stab at this and come back at the September meeting.
Sure. And let me just make one really quick point. I wanted to make sure, you know, I'm not suggesting a diversion. It's an addition, right? We're not trying to divert people away. I mean, the 990 is there for a reason, and it you know, it fulfills that purpose. But while you have, you know, less than 140 characters, or how many characters it is there a way to have an additional story in the context of this document? That's the point I'm trying to make.
I'm excited to annotate it.
But it's also where that goes.
Exactly.
This conversation is not really about the 990. It's about, you know, the hook in the 990 that takes you somewhere that addresses all of what you guys have been talking about.
Right.
You know, what Justin, you were talking about in terms of the
paragraph.
Yeah, the paragraph of explanation. Carl, what you were talking about in terms of what happens in in Great Britain, and the explanation of things in a way that shows others what to do. But very little of that's going to happen in the 990. The 990 is just simply going to be the pass-through
Right.
to that. And hopefully with a way of doing it that's more than, you know, you want to learn more? Click here.
Exactly.
I think for myself, my only point to offer is on what you just said, Dimitri, and that is, I think it's in our best interest, or it's in the best interest overall, if we simply focus our effort and our time on what would help people to understand creating the future the best, as opposed to trying to create something that is a teaching tool for others, because we're going to be so self-conscious about what it is that others should get out of it, rather than what we're trying to generate as the best possible resource for ourselves, as well as the participants, the fellows, the members, and if others are able to learn from that, even greater. But I'm a little bit shy about some of the self-consciousness that comes with trying to do all those things in one document.
And I agree with you, Gail. What I was thinking is the very fact that we're doing this becomes that.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah. As opposed to the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if we can wrap up this conversation, if you want to add more thoughts to the discussion, please feel free to do that in our board listserv. That would be great. So I'm conscious that we have 3 pretty meaty topics today, and want to move on to the next one, which is the consideration of a framework for compensating instructors who work with creating the future. So Hildy is going to share a proposal with us that should get us at least going, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
And Candace, can you give us the same maybe 15 minutes?
Yeah, I don't think we should. I don't think it'll take.
Not even that many? Okay. Well, give us 15, and let's see if we can't finish it faster. Thanks.
I want to start not with the proposal, but I want to start with the why. I want to start with where we've been and using our framework, meeting us where we are, and reaching for what is possible. Where we are is that we are at a jumping-off point where we have faculty that's not helping Dimitri. That Gail and Nancy are going to begin teaching the immersion course, that we have faculty that have been in preparation for teaching everything from writing blog posts, which you saw in the journal, to teaching flash classes, teaching webinars, the potential for doing workshops in their own communities. And the question arises, will there be compensation for this, which there darn well better be. That also then includes Dimitri and me in the question of, okay, what is the compensation in terms of instructors? So that's sort of what the issue has been. What we have been very mindful of when we look at what does this make possible, we've talked in the past, and I know that Alexandra was a big proponent of talking about questions about intellectual property, who owns the intellectual property, etc. And when we come from a place rather than protecting intellectual property and protecting creating the future, when we come to it from a place of what this makes possible for intellectual growth and building knowledge upon knowledge, so that our instructors are learning and sharing what they know and what they have learned, rather than filling out a form and saying, okay, I hit these 4 points in my presentation. What we realize is that we have the opportunity to create a structure that honors our instructors, helps them to move their own work forward, encourages them to move their own work forward, which will move creating the future's thinking forward in terms of our instruction. Also then turns into our R&D, also turns into our demonstration, and really can accomplish more. And so in looking at a format, and the world exploded. in looking at a format of both who owns the intellectual property, unquote, and how are people compensated for the work that they're doing, what we've realized is twofold, and I want to handle the intellectual property part of that separately, but maybe it'll all wind up together in my talking. People are going to teach what they're brilliant at, and we want people to teach what they're brilliant at and what they feel brilliant at and what they want to explore themselves. Maybe I'm not setting aside the intellectual property. It's wonderful that they own that and that they share that and that we give them a wonderful place to share that. And so I own the Pollyanna Principles, but I share that. Others own the blog posts that they have just posted, but they're sharing that, and we want to build on that. So what we're looking at as a potential compensation structure is very similar to what we see in other organizations. That Creating the Future would take of any gross revenues, and with one small caveat, but of gross revenues, Creating the Future would take 20% off the top of that for administering. So that would be registration, that would be all of the stuff, the credit card fees, et cetera, of what it costs to actually get that revenue, develop the classes, put them online, et cetera. After that, Creating the Future would also reimburse for travel expenses. So obviously that's not an issue for flash classes and webinars, but it is an issue for immersion. So if there's going to be an immersion class in Seattle and Gail is going to be the person teaching that, obviously, or I'm going to be the person teaching that, there's going to be the expenses. So off the top comes the travel expenses, off the top comes 20% for Creating the Future, and then the remainder is split 50-50 between the instructor and Creating the Future. The two exceptions that we've been sort of thinking about is one that also gives incentive to the instructor to promote the class. The two exceptions to that I really haven't played a lot with, but we can talk about. One is a revenue threshold. So, for instance, if a flash class only brings in $100, a webinar only brings in $100. Do we really want to be taking $20, which is not going to cover anything of what Creating the Future is putting into it? So do we have a minimum threshold? And we can figure out what that minimum threshold should be just administratively. And then the second is what happens when someone is training and it's their first time. So if they're training and it's their first time, for instance, for a flash class, that's going to require a ton of hand-holding, and chances are we're going to be co-writing the class and co-producing the class. In the case of a flash class, which is recorded, it could be that first time any revenues come to Creating the Future, but that because it's recorded and it's going to be repeated over and over again, then the split happens there. So those two exceptions, I think we might want to sort of work out maybe aside, but I think what I would really love to see approved at least today is a compensation arrangement that again takes 20% off the gross revenues plus expenses, travel expenses, and then splits the remainder 50-50 between the instructor and Creating the Future.
Thoughts, ideas, responses?
I missed some of the conversation because my other phone went off. Just say that last sentence to me again about the split, Hildy.
What we're looking at, Carl, is a split where 20% of gross revenues would go to Creating the Future for admin and operations and putting whatever the class is together. Travel expenses would come off that as well, so if someone is having to travel to teach immersion, and then splitting the remainder 50-50 between Creating the Future and the instructor, which our intent being that we're doing the very, very best we can to honor what the instructor is bringing in terms of their wisdom, and we're providing the platform for that.
And how would you set day rates?
I'm sorry?
Who sets the day rates for different instructors?
Day rate being what?
Sorry, do you charge per class or
We charge per class.
All right. Okay.
So if we had a workshop, for instance, here in Tucson, let's just say, and the gross was $1,000, and 20% off the top came to Creating the Future, that would be $200. So there'd be 800 left. I wouldn't have to travel very far, and so I would get 400, and Creating the Future would get 400.
That seems perfectly reasonable to me if the instructors are happy with that. My only comment would be: do you want to separate travel out from the day rate so that it's separate? So,
I'm still not getting it. I'm still not getting a day rate. I guess I'm not understanding a day.
Sorry. The travel separate. Do you need to treat the travel separately from the cost of the class? That's the better way of saying it.
What we've been thinking about is that, let's say we're talking about immersion. And so just for round numbers, let's say $10,000 is the gross revenues. It would be significantly more than that. It would be closer to 20, but I can't deal with that right now. So if it was $10,000 and we took 20% off the top for the work Creating the Future has to do in that, so now we would be talking about $8,000. If Gail had to travel to Seattle and have X amount of hotels, so let's say that was another $2,000 off the top, so now there would be $6,000, and we would be splitting the $6,000, 3 to Gail, 3 to Creating the Future. And her travel would obviously be reimbursed by Creating the Future because we took that off the top. Does that answer the question?
It does. I suppose what I'm just trying to think about, and I suppose this is only really going to apply in a commercial setting, because some people will have significantly more travel expenses than others, or some people might feel inclined to stay in a first-class hotel type thing.
I see. Okay.
Oh, you mean like a government minister?
Yes. I suppose that those sorts of gaming challenges are not really going to be an issue.
Well, we can detail them out if they become an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah. What our expectation is, and generally, it's a good point. Generally, what we look at is government per diem allowance, as the and that airfare just is what it is.
Not government minister per diem.
That's a different. That's only for me.
Oh, okay.
Other thinking.
This is Justin. I think I unmuted. I think that works well for me. I think the only issue is I understand what you were saying about the startup component, but I would prefer to just see that wrapped in. If that means adjusting something somewhere or acknowledging that that's part of what gets compensated in the 50-50 split of the remainder is, those costs, knowing that some of that the costs are greater on the front end, but then, the investment of time. So what you basically get is from the instructor standpoint. So this is me from an instructor standpoint. I know the first time I teach a course, it's always going to be a lot more time, but I'm banking on the fact that I'm going to be able to teach it multiple times. And so over the course of the engagement over time, I'm going to recoup, or that upfront investment becomes de minimis. And I think particularly in looking at that arrangement of Creating the Future, which is, the instructor is putting, let's just say if it's emergent, 5 days every time they do it. Creating the Future may be putting 10 days up front for the first time that a particular instructor teaches it, but Creating the Future captures that down the road when they're not putting 5 days in, but they're still getting that split of the revenue. That made sense.
I want to actually I want to reframe that because I'm loving it. I'm loving where it's taking me, which is that I was coming from the purely time and money standpoint, and no. If we are about investing in people, then that's our mission, is to do that. and our mission is to teach and to invest in our people. And so if it's going to take 20 hours of my working with somebody to develop their first flash class, then that is what our mission is.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that.
I'm loving that.
The other thing to consider is that we want to make sure that people recognize that we expect or hope that they will continue to participate after as well in the reflection and review and evaluation. So we need to make sure that we're being realistic about how much time we're expecting ourselves and all of the folks participate, because that's really much more important even than the upfront, because we got to think about what worked.
Yeah. Yeah, Justin, thank you. I love that kick in the head.
Well, and I think, this is a piece that is in that second part of that financial piece that we were talking about on fee-based, which is when we start talking about time and dollars per time, for a professional, that means that their future hours are worth less than their upfront hours. And so we actually want to, we want to say, what's it worth for this deliverable? And yeah, we know that it's those trend lines, which is, financial return per hour spent increases over time. But that doesn't make the value of the outcome any different. That's just the learning curve. And so the idea, I think, in particularly to what Gail was saying, is when we engage people in a longer term relationship, particularly as instructors, where there's future revenue, down the road, people get more comfortable with that. And they say, okay.
I'm going to reframe your statement of that's just the learning curve. And I'm going to say that the learning curve is our mission. The learning curve is our obligation to that we have said we want to joyfully take on. That we are about the learning curve. This is really exciting to me. Thank you for this.
Yep. And it gets to the concern that we had, the worry that we had that people have all sorts of things that they want to shop to us on a one-time basis. That helps us to set the stage or lay the foundation for shifting that conversation to something much more substantial.
I want to make sure, because all the voices we've heard are people who have a confluence of interest, because we are potential instructors. So I want to make sure, in terms of Sydney, Mark, Carl, Alex. Yeah. I don't know what I apologize if I'm making presumptions, but I know where Gail and I are on this curve. I just want to make sure how it sounds to you, being one step further removed than we are.
Just for context, I'm not sure if you know these numbers, Hildy or Dimitri, but how many teachers do you have now? What percentage have taught more than one class? What percent have taught, I don't know, say 5 classes or more? Do you know?
We have one instructor. She's taught a whole lot of stuff. And the goal is that she stopped teaching so much, and she gets paid really handsomely. Her split is astronomical. Did you read the 990? So what the goal really is, Alex, is we've got probably a half dozen people who are eager at various points to jump in. Gail and Nancy will begin teaching immersion within the next 6 months. We are looking at least 2 other people taking on flash classes. And so that's why it's so important that we do this before rather than after. So, yeah.
Other questions? More information that you might be needing?
So and I would like to go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's not so much a question. It's more an observation that you prototype this. If it doesn't work, we change it.
Yeah.
It's not a binary decision that we'll be held to forever.
Yep.
And it may be different for different types of classes.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Okay, so is there any objection to our moving forward with 20% plus travel off the top, 50-50 split thereafter, regardless of whether that is in training or not. We'll come up with what a threshold amount is. For right now, let's at least say $100. Is there any objection to our pursuing that? And I love the prototyping it, seeing how it works.
Can I make one more observation, and that is when we finally write this thing up as a whatever policy or protocol, that we make sure that we go back to the recording of this, so that we can capture the values that we wanted to lay as the foundation of why and how we do this, so that we can reflect on those when we come back. As Carl is saying, if this is a pilot, then we want to be able to evaluate and review on the basis of what it was we thought we were trying to establish, not what ends up happening necessarily.
Just like we did with the 990. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
What I'd like to propose is that we set a date now for when we would like to evaluate and review this, that we share this with our fellows and with others who may be teaching, that we post it to the blog and get comment on it, and that we set a date now of when we would like to evaluate and review it.
Yeah. Suggestions? What would you like, board members? What would you like to see as that date?
At the risk of sort of being slightly counter to where the discussion has just gone, I thought Justin's point is the most important thing I've heard in this discussion, and I almost sort of think I'm actually personally less interested in what the exact percentages are and sort of who gets what. I'm more interested in the principle that Justin espoused, and that's what, as a board member, I feel I want to be aware of at points over the future. Is it working in principle rather than
Yeah.
So that's my
Thanks for that. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Rebecca had a couple of tweets, but she just had one that on a smaller scale, I experienced the learning curve / mission in action with HG in writing my first article. So powerful.
Yeah, Rebecca and I spent several hours going over and reviewing her blog post for the journal this time. And that was great.
Beautiful.
Yeah, okay. And I do love that, Carl. Thank you for that. Is it working in principle? When we evaluate and review, so do we want to say 6 months? Do we want to say a year? I would say a year gives us time to actually give it a go.
Definitely a year.
Yeah.
If it's not working, I'm sure we'll hear on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we still have a pretty big startup curve of bringing instructors on. So I think, it's going to be a while before we see what the rhythm is that we're piloting.
Yeah, if our work with faculty development has been any indication, it's very intensive. It takes a lot of time just to organize it, let alone do it. And because these are all people who are working in other places, so it's a huge piece of work.
Then given that, is the right time at which to review the amount of time, or might it be just the number of classes we've held or the number of instructors that we've brought on?
Very good. Very smart.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of the above.
Rather than an amount of time. We want to instead say that we will review when we have, let's say, 6 instructors, 4 instructors, and X number.
4.
4?
Yeah, I think we need to be reviewing sooner rather than later.
Great. That's great. Brilliant, Alex. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay. Also, continuing to be conscious of time and noting that it's the half past the hour. And Sydney, you said that you need to depart shortly, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you meant 2:30 instead of 1:30. Or are you?
Did I say 1:30? I meant to say 2:30.
Okay, yes. Cool. Okay.
Or I'm late.
So we have been working together now using Google Hangout and publicly televising our meetings for quite a long time, and I can't even remember how long. It's a year and a half, and it's definitely time for us to review our experience of what this has made possible, our ideas for the kinds of things that we might have lost and might wish to address. So, and interestingly, I'm trying to find it now, there was a note from Bill Music yesterday asking us, or noting to us, that BoardSource listserv was discussing the kinds of constraints that might be on. This is what he says: a question came upon the BoardSource CGT, I'm not sure exactly what that is, listserv about non-board member participation in board members and what constraints, if any, to place on non-director participation. I suggested that Creating the Future would be a radical example of openness, but led me to wonder, does Creating the Future have any guidance on how much or how non-directors participate? So also important for us in our conversation today is acknowledging the way people participate with us and the degree to which that contributes to our conversations.
The Twitter stream.
Is there anything happening at this moment in the Twitter stream?
Where I'm trying to get. Dimitri has it so far away I can't see it because I don't have my glasses on.
There's nothing there right now.
Nothing there right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
you kind of watch me.
I thought the use of the word radical was interesting.
Yeah, that's how I think of you, Mark.
Like we're some sort of, I hesitate to use the T word, but that's really what we seem like. I don't know.
We're an extremist group.
Yes, exactly. We're an extremist group.
What's the T word?
Terrorist.
Oh my God.
Oh, hello, NSA. How are you doing?
Thanks, Mark. Now we're really open.
Yeah,
Yeah, not so much.
yeah. We were open and the NSA suddenly looked up.
But you know that
Well,
the
they probably
conversation
don't
we
talk
had.
about themselves as that. I'm going to guess that most terrorist groups don't say, so, in our terror activities last week, what is the terror report?
Who knows? They might have minutes.
Yeah.
But
So-
but the thing is that I was just thinking when that word was used, I was like, okay, now, where would they be? Where would we meet these people if that's the word they use for what we do?
You know, really.
Well, I'm glad though that Bill brought it up, because I think
Oh, absolutely.
there's some value in us addressing as well the way that we have encouraged participation and the degree to which it has affected us, as well as the degree to which it has affected them.
I think maybe that was just a word that Bill threw out, but if that's a word that people are associating with how we're doing things, I think we've got to keep that in mind when we spread what we're spreading.
Mm-hmm.
The words radical and extreme have been used pretty consistently.
Well,
Which-
good. We're doing something right.
Yeah.
Which seems bizarre to me, because the more you open, the better quality, in my opinion, especially in terms of the first question, what have we learned? We've learned a ton from the participation of people who may feel that they have an equal stake without having that, their names signed on the dotted line on a document. And that's been very encouraging.
I think that there's another entity beyond us, beyond the participants, but that's the people who would potentially come back and look at these meetings in the future. Yeah, in addition to the ones that may be tweeting and live and participating in real time, but the fact that the input of our guests is incorporated into the thinking and the outcomes that these meetings generate.
Yeah.
I've been writing an article. I'm in the editing stages right now for an article for Stanford Social Innovation Review on this topic, which is very exciting, by the way. And one of the things that I observed in there was, and it seems so simple, but we just keep, and internally here in the office, we say it all the time, which is, oh my God, if you open the door, people actually come in. That has just been, talk about radical. Organizations wonder all the time, how can we engage our community? How can we, quote, go out to the community? And what we did was we opened the door and said, there is no out to, just come on in. And one example, sitting right here is, Justin, you came into the fold here by coming to one of our meetings. You and I had some chit chat, had some conversation, and I said, you may want to observe one of our meetings coming up. That led to your joining us in an immersion class. It led to your being a guest in the board meeting. It led to your being on the board. I mean, it's been so remarkable how many people have and you and I had met before. I can't even start to tell you the number of people we'd never met before. That we opened the door, they walked in, and we went, wow, we didn't even know you were out there.
So can we build a quick list then? To what extent has having open meetings created a stronger outcome for us? That's the first question. The second one is, to what extent have open meetings inhibited us or changed the outcomes?
For me, the first thing I would say is that having an open meeting is just a constant reminder that we're not being insular, that we're not just doing this for creating the future, we're doing it for the larger tribes or crowds out there.
It's another example of us eating our own dog food. You just can't tell people to do something and not do it yourself. If they observe us behaving differently, they're just going to think we're full of it.
Yeah.
I think that as we've been talking about this, there are sort of two, it seems like every time we have a conversation, I talk about two parallel things happening. One is the dialogue and deliberation. So just the process of thinking through something and seeing what the comments are on Twitter, spurring a question, having points where the additional voices can come in, I think is invaluable. Because, we can only be as good as the 6 opinions that are here. When we start adding more opinions and thought, we amplify our voices as well as other people's. The place where I think we haven't really explored so much is actual decision making. I think we're still working through how we do our decision making, and some of it is we haven't been confronted with significant decisions where there was robust debate or disagreement, and so I don't think we actually know enough on that realm to see what happens in an open environment when you begin to tread on less safe spaces, even though we create a safe space here, and so there's a juxtaposition there. But those are the two things that I'm kind of thinking about as we're having this conversation. The dialogue deliberation is phenomenal. I love that. The decision making, I'm just not in a place to judge yet. I haven't seen it play out.
I'm recalling a meeting we had maybe a year and a half ago where we internally, I shouldn't say internally, we had through our open meetings, because it's not just our board meetings that are open, all of our meetings are open. And I think that's a really important part, that it's not just this one. Our branding meetings were all open, our resource development meetings were all open, our program development meetings were all open, and through those meetings, we came to a fork in the road about where do we aim to develop programs? Do we aim at, and again, looking at the continuum of potential, do we aim at the place that is the most likely to tip the fastest? So the people who are ready to dive in, take immersion, go for it, or do we aim at the end of the spectrum that is in that smaller, I'm willing to take maybe a baby step place? And we looked at it both from a curriculum standpoint, we looked at it from a revenue standpoint, we looked at it from a values and mission standpoint. And it was the most amazing meeting I have ever been in, as the board wrangled with each of us coming from our own different places, some coming from the scarcity place of saying, but we need the money, and some coming from the values place, and some coming from the mission place, the board wrangled with that to watch our community participate and say, no, wait a minute, the one thing you can never give up is our values, and we can't, and we've got to find a way that brings our values together with the issue of revenue and brings it all together. And it was one of the most amazing sessions I've ever been in, of the power of our community being very, very clear that what we were wrangling with, they wanted to see us, they were demanding, you figure this out. And it was amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think another positive or whatever, and this is a corollary to Mark's eating dog food. When we've been talking about the 990 and having this page that talks about who we are and what we do, clearly linking to some of the meetings as an example that that Hildy was talking about that are not our board meetings, and then also we're talking about having discussions for partners and partnerships with organizations. Well, what better way than to show them this is what we're doing? This is our governance. This is how our governance happens, and this is how our planning happens. And when we're talking about partnership, we're talking about partnership in a context that's like this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it opens us up even further to people when we do our board meetings this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and we learn. I mean, the number of times that a tweet or the inviting of somebody into the actual hangout with us just to have an additional voice in the room, the number of times that has completely turned the conversation.
Absolutely. What do you think has been lost, or what are the challenges that we have faced in doing this in an open way?
I think the question assumes that there have been, so I would like to ask it differently.
Okay, well, have there been?
Have there been? Have there been?
Okay. I would say yes, there have been, and they're probably ones that people experience, and I think they're pretty normal. But sometimes I find that I worry about, especially if I'm facilitating, I worry about, do we need more glossary so that the people who might be watching understand the subtext of what we're saying, or the language, or I worry that being open can also sound exclusive, and can run contrary to what we were intending to do.
That's an interesting observation.
Oh yeah, and it's because I spent so much time watching our meetings when I first said I would do this, watching how we do what we do and seeing where there might be opportunities for different things. It gave me lots of ideas for what we could be doing, but it really made me conscious of the fact that sometimes we sound like an insular group, because all boards sound like this eventually, right? The culture starts to form, and but I really am conscious that we don't want people to think that this is a closed loop that they really can't get into or be part of.
Well, that really raises an interesting thought in my mind is, do we have every meeting annotated in some way with, you're talking about glossary with, here's a link for our philosophy, here's a link for this and this. I mean, that's like right on the screen for every meeting.
Yeah.
It's another role. It's another role. It's somebody whose role is to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, the process watcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have sometimes had a sense, and we've done one closed meeting so far. We have a policy on when our meetings are closed, and we've done one closed meeting in the past 6 months or so, which was when the board was concerned about finances and specifically concerned about Dimitri and I not getting a salary. And taking the time to go through that. So what I've found is that there are times when it does make sense to have closed meetings when the board is uncomfortable about something, and that's in our policy. And so I've sort of been feeling like that. It's sort of an indication that it's working. Mm-hmm. That when there is something where we're really uncomfortable, and specifically we have said in the policy, and I don't have it up in front of me, but it's basically if the parties to something are in essence made uncomfortable. So if we're in a new relationship, if it is a personnel matter, if the party that's not the board or the individuals feel uncomfortable, that we sort of get together and talk about that.
Here it is.
Okay, here we go. The Board of Creating the Future seeks to weigh the balance between protecting the legal obligations of the organization, honoring the privacy of individuals, and instilling trust by engaging openly. The board further acknowledges that we hold dear the value of risk-taking through creative conversation and exploration. And the board assumes that everyone present is doing his or her best to hold the best interests of the broad community and Creating the Future participants in mind as they participate in or observe Creating the Future board meetings. The assumption at the core of this policy is therefore that all discussions will be public unless they meet the following criteria. 1, when there are legal requirements for privacy. 2, when public conversation would seriously hamper Creating the Future's work. 3, when public conversation would hamper establishing and testing new relationships. 4, when an individual has a desire for privacy, for example, employee relations. In case of the circumstances noted above, the board may vote to discuss that issue in private session. In all other circumstances, discussions will be public. And quite honestly, when an individual has a desire for privacy, was the board saying, we want to talk about what's going on, we're not comfortable, we want to talk about what's going on with Hildy and Dimitri. And so I've felt, I guess one of my observations on the pro side was I have felt that really good about the way we worded our policy about being closed.
And that is, by the way, on the What is Creating the Future's About Us page at the website. So the policy is publicly posted. The one thing I wanted to add that I don't know is that we are open, even though we have our, some time together before we go live. Are there circumstances and situations where board members might be inhibited, or it's a little bit of what you were talking about, Gail, but you were talking about it from the perspective of the chair, and I'm sort of thinking about it from the perspective of the other board members, might be inhibited in saying or exploring an area that may not be controversial or anything, but they want to look at something and maybe concerned what would happen if this is public.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have to say that in conversations with, I think with everyone, it hasn't come up explicitly so much as it has been just something that I've been aware of with all of us, that there are times when, you don't know the answer to a question and you're not sure you want to ask it publicly. You want to have some chance to explore something, diplomatically or delicately. And I think that sometimes there are moments when being wide open can inhibit, because I think we save up questions then that are on our minds, trying to find the moment when we can ask them without, it being too whatever. And it's not necessarily that it's that controversial.
From my perspective, I'm a big believer in the power of defaults. So I really like, especially hearing what you read out, Hildy, that really the default is that we're open and we find excuses to be closed. So I much prefer that to being closed than finding excuses to be open. Mm-hmm. And so in that case, Gail, I can't say I've felt times like that, although I can certainly empathize and understand cases where that would come up, in which case I feel like there are avenues in which I could pursue things privately if needed. But I err on the side of open.
Carl, what are you thinking?
I'm completely agreeing with what Alex just said. My sort of possibly guilt, I don't know, admission is that I almost forget that the meetings are open. Because it's just normal. And You know, so God knows what I'm doing in front of the camera half the time. No, they just work for me. I really like this idea that it is the default and it's the exception that you have to be closed. My only worry, I don't know if that's the right word, is the fact that actually not that many people might be watching, and not that many people might be engaging, and we're not achieving what we want to achieve by being involved. But I mean, that's incidental.
Well, it's not. And one thing that I would ask is to what extent are, and maybe I won't ask it, but think about it. Don't answer it. To what extent are each of us promoting the board meetings and inviting people to them? To what extent are each of us saying to 3 people or 10 people or on a listserv where we are or wherever, saying, the board meeting's coming up, we're going to be talking about this, will you come? And I'm not asking you guys to answer that. I'm just suggesting that that I think part of the reason that I agree with you, Carl. I would love to see many more people. Is that it has not been a priority in the 9 million things that we are doing, and Candace is starting to make it more of a priority to do the promotion and the inviting on our end. But I'm loving the thought of what it would make possible if each of you, reaching into your own communities and the people that you come in contact with, that would bring just a breadth of all of the diverse populations that we all come in contact with.
One thing I was thinking about before this, Hildy, which goes off of your point of promotion, because I totally agree, Carl, that I'd love to get more people involved, make a more dynamic discussion, is the idea of, I was very honored to come join as a guest. And so I wonder if there's a way to do the guest, but actually have sort of the people's chair, so to speak. And so their job is to be sort of the voice of the community, and then take a page out of like what Sweden did with their Twitter account, where they invite one random Swede to be the person running the Twitter account each week. And so do something like that where you sort of bring someone in, and then their job is basically to rally their peers, their tribes, to come join, and then hopefully we can build things up that way.
That's a great idea.
Could you make Sweden's temperature a little bit more temperate? Because I so want to live there.
That's the secret. Otherwise, there'd be way too many people here. But the winters keep it.
Oh my God.
Are there analytics, Dimitri, that you follow that show how many people watch these things after the fact?
After yeah, yes and no. Google makes it difficult. Unfortunately, one of the things that happens, you notice in YouTube, you can see how many people viewed it.
Yeah.
In Google Hangout, you can't.
Oh.
But possibly sort of almost recanting on what I said, I think it's really, really important that we're open.
Yeah.
And I love being able to say to people, I'm the trustee of a board that conducts its meetings online and anybody can take part. That's such a calling card when you go out and you do talk to people about creating the future. I wonder, thinking aloud, 2 hours is a long time. And I wonder how reasonable it might be to expect people to come and listen to a 2-hour board meeting. But I think if we were going to say, as a board, we're going to spend 15 minutes discussing X or Y, that's the sort of thing that actually that might be quite fun to go out and say, fancy just listening into this bit of the board discussion tonight at night at whatever, and flag up exactly when we do it, and then that will force us to keep to time.
One of the things that we've been exploring here, as we look at interns and volunteers and things that Candace has really been spearheading, is the idea of indexing our meetings by subject points. Afterwards. So in addition to what you're saying, you know, that at 1:30 we're going to talk about X, but actually going in and saying at 1 hour and 15 minutes, there's a discussion on the following.
We spoke about, so not just we will speak about.
Yes, but we spoke about, so that once you have that indexed, then now you can cross-reference it. You can have blog posts that are written that say, and to see the actual discussion, click here. That takes you not to the 2-hour board meeting, but right to the point where that issue, item, topic is being discussed. So I think there's some real interesting possibilities along the lines of being able to tell other people after the fact, this was an amazing discussion, here's where it is.
What I love about that is that it's so respectful of people's time. It's us pre-thinking how to make their participation the most effective we can help them it be.
Well, and as we're talking about this, Carl, you really hit on something, which is openness is the means.
Yeah.
And I think you expressed that one of the ends, which is actual engagement, that's a different question, whether we're accomplishing that or, other ends, which are board behavior, board culture. The openness is just the tool to get there. And I think this is sort of a reflection, but off of what Alex had said of, the default. I don't know where the quote came from. I know I came across it somewhere through Creating the Future of, the CEO who is asked by a board member, what if we train everybody and they leave, or they get really good at their job and they leave? And, the CEO says, well, what if we don't? It's sort of the same thing, what happens if suddenly we open it and we start getting everybody's opinion about how to make the world a better place? well, what if we don't?
Yeah.
Justin, you're raising something for me that I would like us to talk about at a future board meeting, which is we have, for about 18 months now, done the open part. We've opened the door, and to the extent that, before Candace got here, Dimitri and I have time, and mostly me, have promoted and invited people. And very much like Alex, we invited you to come into the actual meeting itself, and Justin, we had and actually Carl as well had asked you guys to come into the meeting itself. We're going to start that again in September. We've got a couple of people who are going to be joining us inside the meeting in September, in October, in November, and so that piece will be starting up. The thought that's occurring to me for a future meeting is, okay, we've opened the doors, and we've got that down. Where do we want to take this? And if it is about engagement, what do we as a board want to do in terms of creating engagement around this? I would love to see that conversation.
The other thing I would add to that, Hildy, is that when we went to the Board Source conference, this was the topic. That this was our workshop, and there were people in the room who were really afraid. Like, they thought we were nuts. And they had tons of reasons why this was a bad idea and this would never work and it's been a disaster and blah, blah, blah. And I have the feeling that at the very least 18 months and hopefully much longer as we go on doing this, we are going to be able to name the fear and have the evidence to show that the world hasn't ended. The organization is actually thriving in the midst of opening the doors and inviting people to come in, as opposed to what they believed was going to happen, which was that there would be such a disruption that no board business would get done.
I'd just like to clarify, we are nuts. It's just that we're not nuts because we're open.
It's one of many indicators.
I think Carl uses the phrase barking mad.
I love it.
What would we do if everyone saw us doing this?
Oh, my.
Uh-oh.
They might do it, too. Okay.
What if they do?
I want to be mindful of time. We've just got a couple minutes left, and we don't have Mark for very long or Carl.
Yeah.
Gail, you and I had talked about a couple of different things to discuss in September.
Go.
One of them was, and I can just do this as a status update because of the pace at which it is going, but a discussion of the blog posts that I have been doing on funding and what the status is on that, and I think even just having a conversation about that. Another thing that is becoming more and more important to us, it became clear with the 990, it has become clear in several conversations, is we would very much like indicators, and this is this we and then Gail and I. What does the board want to know in terms of performance indicators every month? so that you're not looking at, well, you get the financials when Hilda gets them done, or you know, we got this thing of programs and now we got the 990. On a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, what would the board like to see in terms of performance measures? And I would very much appreciate that conversation in September.
Okay, but what if the answer was not much?
I'd be happy. You know, what in the not much category, what would you like to know? What little amount would you like to have?
It's just the turnover is $60,000. I don't want to have some huge reporting burden.
However, go back though, and again, we're not going to necessarily delve into this deeply, but go back into Justin's point around the 990, which it was, you know, we really need to show and capture how much effort goes into this mission outside of the 60,000. What would it make possible if we were showing that kind of performance indicator?
What would we want to know, for example, and we'll talk, if it's okay with you guys to talk about this in September, I'd love to. What do we want to know? Yeah, okay, what revenues came in and where'd they come from? That's, okay, let's set that aside. What resources did we nurture, and how did we nurture them, and how do we know? Are we doing better at nurturing our resources, and what are those resources, and how do we know that we're doing okay at that? What are we accomplishing and in our mission areas, and how do we know? So those are some of the questions that I'm sort of, I would very much like to be sharing with you guys on a much more regular basis, but I'd like to be sharing it. In the olden days when we were doing consulting, we came to the very early realization that reports to the board by executive directors were horrible. And they were horrible because no executive director had ever gone to the board and said, what do you want to know? So they just made a whole bunch of crap up saying, well, we'll just give them a whole lot of, we'll tell them everything we're doing, and nobody ever read them, and you fall asleep during them. And so what we always said was, if you want to know what to put in the report, ask the board what they want to know. And so if we were to do, for instance, a dashboard, if I were to do a 3-minute video and we were to do a dashboard, what 3 indicators would we want to look at? Those are the kinds of things that I would love to be able to share with you guys on a more regular basis. That we're all on the same page, so that it's not staff and board, so that we're all working together.
Great, and as we think about those things, I just want to encourage us, if we think about it, to think about things that are not so, I don't know, financial resources or other resources. But like, one question I want to know is, how inspired are you guys going to work at this point? So I just want us to think about those types of questions we prep for next month.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, Alex.
That
That is also something that helps inform people who stumble upon Creating the Future, wondering, well, what is this? What are they doing? And I think that being able to capture that information in a succinct, clear way, including what you just suggested, Alex, is things that are not in the normal realm of what a board reports.
Two things. I think I would like at our next meeting, actually based on what this conversation is talking about, to, because I saw Mark is going to be able to be there. I know, Alex, we missed you on the last meeting when we talked about making our planning possible. I think we need to revisit that, talk about it a little bit more intentionally about how we're going to make this happen. Because we need to not drop the ball, and I think there's even some different opinions on the board about how we prioritize and make it happen. And so I would like to have us do that. The other piece is somewhat self-serving, but it's part of the board's work, is that I threw out some initial draft language around the bylaws. And so, you know, as Hildy, as you were talking about the guidelines for the meeting and the openness, that triggered in me, this is something that should be in that broader document that we're collecting together. So we don't have to review it, but I again, sort of put the salvo out there, and I'd like to see some response. So are we going the right direction, or are we not?
I don't remember seeing it, Justin.
Yeah, I don't either, Justin.
Oh.
Okay, I'll resend it then. I think I had sent it to the board list, but I'll send it again. Maybe that's why I didn't hear anything about it.
No, you did. I remember it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like we have at least 3 really meaty topics for another month. So that's wonderful. And we'll have a guest. Hildy will have a guest in September?
I know that we will have at least one guest, Jim Bendel, who is the CEO of the Community Foundation of Westmoreland County, who was our primary partner that led to all of the work that we've been doing in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Jim's wonderful, and he will be with us in September, and a couple other invitations out to folks, and we'll see who shows up.
Okay, well, Jim, I'm sure will be a nice connection there around performance indicators, that's for sure, as we do some design work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, as we're then reflecting on what happened during this meeting and the takeaways and so forth, where are you at? What has really stood out for you today? What are the reflections that you will take with you and mull for the next little while? Hildy Gottlieb, your hand is up.
Oh, pick me, pick me. I am so, and I know I reflect this often, I am so consistently grateful for these meetings because no matter who you are, it is so easy to get into the weeds. And yeah, okay, I'm the founder, and yeah, okay, right now I'm the principal teacher, and it's still really easy for me to get into the weeds. And the thought, as we were talking about instructor compensation, that the most important thing that we can invest is the time in that long period of time that it takes to do the training that first time. I could have stopped the meeting right there and left. I am so deeply appreciative of this board consistently pulling me personally and us out of the weeds.
Nice.
I'm going to have to go in a second, but my reflection is it's great that we're all here.
It is.
Say, sorry, Carol, can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
It's great, Gail, when all of us are here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does make a difference, actually.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
My reflection, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Dimitri.
My reflection is actually two-part. One, things always happen in the last 5 minutes that you've talked about so often, Gail. And that was on Alex's comment right at the end here about is one of the things that we're measuring basically the level of enthusiasm and excitement toward the work that we're doing. And I would apply that at all levels for everyone, for the board, for that, to me, that is a real important thing that needs to be part of what we do. So I reflect on that, and thank you. Alex.
How often does that show up on the board source, board self-assessment? Are you having fun as a board member?
Is that a standard for excellence?
I'm not sure. Are you having fun? They don't get that specific. Mine was Dimitri probably saw it because he was following the tweets. I tweeted that we were laughing, and I've never seen a board laugh when talking about the 990, which I thought was just telling of the type of conversation that we're having, that we can kind of push those envelopes. But more seriously, I actually am really I'm really into us figuring out these financial pieces and this reporting piece that unleash it from accounting. It's work that is dear to me, and I really want to see us, tackle that beast and come up with something that works. And so I'm excited to see that moving and hear the conversation around the 990 in the way that amplifies that.
That's something else that needs to be in the September meeting, even if it's just for a few minutes. So thank you for that reminder.
For me, I think my takeaway is around our default of openness and kind of bringing that to as a framework to think about other things in the future. So just reflecting back that it works even with the 990, that it's sort of this inherently closed form for a closed audience, and thinking, well, okay, what about if we try to make it more open, even within the constructs that the IRS gives us?
And you, Ms. Candace?
I really enjoyed the flow of this conversation today, how everything was very, we got really practical and everything was like structured and we continued to move on and it just flowed. I appreciated that.
Mm-hmm.
Gail?
Well, you know, I'm going to go back to the very beginning, and you know, Alex, when you said you experienced a community no, your presentation was about celebrating failure and figuring out how to overcome fear. And I think that that conversation that we had about openness, but you know, it kept coming up all over the place. We actually were able to grapple with the things that we haven't done that well, or we want to improve upon, and continue to underline the commitment that we have to exploring and deepening and doing, always with an eye to what can we be doing better. And I'm so amazed by all of the ideas that came up today, and just how, you know, in other circumstances, when people are talking about what doesn't go well, they get defensive, they get scared, they get nervous. You can tell they're sweating and they're frowning, and I didn't see any of that. I saw a group of people who were eager to find ways to be even better and more awesome than they feel they are now, and I'm just really elated by that.
Gail, one of the things that I have observed over the past several months, and have said sometimes and not said sometimes, is that when you're in learning mode, there is no failure, and so the mandate that we get good at failure. If we instead say that our entire job is to learn, then you don't have to worry about failing.
That's right. That's
Feels
right.
Great. Feels great.
And you can't learn unless you open up that question.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just a giant club of fans, which is lovely, but I like learning. Yeah. Okay, so if there are no other thoughts or comments, is there anything that you want blogged between now and next meeting that's really sticking out for you?
I am going to be blogging, per our conversation, I'm going to be blogging and bringing to the fellows what came out of our instructor compensation conversation. Okay. And if there's anything else that anybody wants.
Put it on the listserv if you do, and otherwise we will see you in 30 days.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time. Take good care, everyone. Bye.
Done.
Dun, da, da, da.